You have spent years desperately searching for a physical healing. You have chased every religious method and you have exhausted every medical treatment, but you are still completely trapped in your physical suffering. In 1948, Joel Goldsmith discovered something in a small room in Hawaii that completely destroys traditional spiritual healing. You have been taught that you must try harder and pray longer to convince a distant God to heal your broken body. That is a devastating religious lie. Your desperate human effort is the exact demonic wall that is blocking your miracle. Joel discovered that absolute divine healing does not require complicated visualizations or exhausting religious affirmations. It requires exactly 3 minutes of pure, unyielding stillness. He discovered 3 specific states of consciousness where your carnal human effort completely dissolves and the infinite presence takes absolute control. We are going to expose the brutal truth about why your intense desire for healing is actually making your sickness worse. You are about to learn the radical, unchangeable laws of divine indifference, impersonal awareness, and the absolute explosive power of nothingness. This revelation will completely shatter everything the modern church has ever taught you about prayer. Look at your desperate attempts to heal your broken physical body. You have been completely deceived by the religious establishment. They told you that if you cry hard enough and beg long enough, the infinite Creator will finally notice your suffering. That is the exact reason your physical disease continues to dominate your life. In 1952, Joel Goldsmith worked with a woman named Catherine who suffered from agonizing physical pain for 12 solid years. She tried every medical treatment and every spiritual practice, but she remained completely bound by her physical agony. She came to Joel in absolute desperation, begging for a miracle. And he told her the most shocking truth she had ever heard. Her very desperation was the exact demonic wall that prevented her healing. The more intensely you care about being healed, the more you legally reinforce the consciousness of being a sick human being. Divine healing does not respond to your pathetic human desperation. It does not answer your intense carnal desire to fix your physical world. It flows with absolute explosive power through a consciousness that has achieved divine indifference. Your carnal mind will instantly reject this truth. Divine indifference is not cold human detachment. It is the absolute violent release of your anxious control over the physical outcome. Think of your desperate need for healing like a completely clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze your human will, the more you block the natural flow of the divine life force. Your frantic prayers for healing are creating massive energetic static that completely distorts the spiritual law. When you finally shift into divine indifference, you instantly stop interfering with the supreme intelligence of the universe. You must stop trying to force your physical body to heal. You must learn the exact practice for the first minute of this profound stillness. You sit in absolute silence and you look directly at your terrifying medical condition without a single ounce of human emotional charge. You do not try to fix it. You do not beg the heavens for it to change. You simply note its physical presence like a passing shadow, and you silently declare that you are divinely indifferent to this condition. The religious establishment has trained you to believe that God requires your tears and your suffering before he will move. They tell you to hold on to your sickness and present it constantly at the altar. You are acting like an absolute spiritual orphan. You are treating the infinite intelligence of the universe like a reluctant human judge who must be persuaded by your physical misery. This demonic theology has kept millions of believers completely paralyzed in their sickness. Divine indifference completely shatters this carnal nonsense. When you step into the first minute of this practice, you are making an absolute declaration of spiritual authority. You are looking at the material world and completely stripping it of its power to dictate your emotions. The physical symptoms may still be screaming in your flesh, but your consciousness is absolutely untouched by the panic. You are no longer a victim begging for a rescue. You are the exact manifestation of divine presence, resting perfectly in the eternal law of the Spirit. You must absolutely trust that the spiritual law knows exactly what is needed without your pathetic human interference. For the first week, your carnal mind will scream in total rebellion. Your human ego will demand that you care more and try harder and beg louder. That is because your ego interprets divine indifference as giving up. But it is actually the highest and most absolute form of spiritual trust. When Catherine stopped trying to heal her physical agony and simply rested in divine indifference, her entire reality shifted. She stopped forcing the spiritual law, and she allowed the infinite presence to completely consume her consciousness. Within months, the physical agony was completely destroyed. The true healing was not just the disappearance of the pain. The ultimate healing was her absolute discovery that she could remain in perfect peace regardless of the screaming physical circumstances. You must train your consciousness to stop interfering with its own divine restoration. Your frantic human effort to be healed is the exact obstacle preventing your miracle. When you completely relax that desperate human effort and you rest in absolute divine indifference, you instantly rip open the channels that were blocked by your own religious intensity. Sit in the stillness today and look at your physical or financial disease. Do not fight it and do not analyze it. Simply observe it with absolute neutral awareness and declare your total divine indifference. You will instantly feel the heavy burden of human striving physically leave your body. You are moving from the exhausting realm of anxious human effort into the absolute, unchangeable flow of divine law. Joel discovered something even more profound that completely destroys the illusion of your personal prayers. The second revelation addresses the exact reason why your personal affirmations and your desperate religious begging fail to produce any lasting physical healing. He called this absolute discovery the impersonal life force, and it will completely revolutionize your entire spiritual existence. In 1956, Joel worked with a man named Michael who was completely paralyzed by severe anxiety. He was a corporate executive whose entire material world was collapsing under the weight of his own mental terror. He tried every medical therapy and every religious practice, but he remained completely bound by his physical panic. He came to Joel completely broken and desperate for a personal miracle. Joel looked at him and asked the most devastating question to the carnal mind. He asked whose anxiety Michael was trying to heal. Michael answered that it was his own anxiety. And Joel told him that was the exact reason the healing had completely eluded him. You must absolutely understand this brutal spiritual truth today. One of the deepest demonic blocks to your miracle is your personal sense of identity. You believe that you have a personal physical problem that requires a personal divine solution. When you approach the infinite intelligence from this pathetic perspective, you completely reinforce the exact carnal consciousness that created the sickness in the first place. You strengthen the absolute illusion that you are separated from the divine wholeness. True healing flows with absolute explosive power through an impersonal awareness. It is a state where you completely recognize that the healing is not personal at all. Divine healing is exactly like the physical sunlight. The sun does not shine personally on your physical body. It shines impersonally, and you simply happen to stand in its absolute light. The infinite healing life force flows impersonally through all consciousness. It does not belong to you and it does not belong to me. It simply is the absolute unchangeable reality of the universe. When you shift from trying to fix your pathetic personal problem to simply opening your spirit to the impersonal healing presence, your entire reality violently changes. The massive error in your personal religious prayer is that it implies a complete separation from God. When you pray and beg the heavens to heal your specific condition, you are legally reinforcing the demonic belief that the healing is separate from you. You are declaring that you lack something that must come from a distant deity. Impersonal awareness absolutely recognizes that divine healing is the natural, unchangeable state of your consciousness. It is always present and it is always available. It is not something you must acquire through human effort. It is exactly what you already are beneath the heavy layers of your carnal personal identification. You must learn the exact technique for the second minute of this profound stillness. After you practice divine indifference, you must violently shift your awareness away from your personal physical concern. You must silently affirm that the healing is present right now, not as your personal healing, but as the absolute universal healing. You must feel your separate human ego completely dissolving into this impersonal healing presence, just like a wave dissolving back into the infinite ocean. You are not trying to fix your broken human self. You are recognizing that the human self you thought needed fixing is an absolute illusion. Your true identity is the infinite consciousness itself, which is always completely whole and forever untouched by physical disease. Michael struggled with this absolute truth for weeks because his carnal mind wanted to hold on to his personal anxiety. But when he finally surrendered his human identity, the physical terror completely lost its power. He realized the ultimate truth of the kingdom. The healing was not the disappearance of his anxiety. The healing was the absolute, undeniable discovery that he was never the anxious human being he thought he was. He was the infinite, impersonal presence in which all physical experiences appear. You must practice this second minute and completely annihilate your personal ego today. Now, we come to the absolute highest revelation that Joel ever discovered. It is the most advanced and terrifying truth to the carnal mind. In 1960, he experienced a profound meditation where every single mental activity completely ceased. He entered the absolute void of nothingness. He discovered that every spiritual practice and every religious visualization he had ever used was actually creating a demonic barrier to the ultimate healing. The moment he completely stopped doing anything and stopped seeking anything, the divine presence absolutely exploded into his reality. He realized that the deepest spiritual healing does not occur through your pathetic religious doing. It only manifests through your absolute spiritual being, which is complete nothingness. The modern church tells you to fill your mind with positive affirmations and desperate prayers. They give your human ego something to do. But every positive thought and every religious visualization is still a massive cloud blocking the absolute clarity of your consciousness. When you practice the third minute, you must enter absolute nothingness. You must completely release the awareness of healing. You must release every single spiritual concept you have ever learned. You sit in absolute stillness, thinking nothing and seeking nothing and being absolutely nothing. Your carnal mind will instantly rebel because it is completely terrified of the emptiness. Your human intellect will desperately try to fill the void with worries and plans and religious verses. You must absolutely release every single thought without engaging it. You return again and again to the absolute pure presence of nothingness. Look at the profound reality of a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She was completely crushed by a physical exhaustion so severe that her entire material existence was falling apart. She tried every physical rest and every spiritual practice, but the demonic exhaustion always returned. When she finally attempted the third minute of absolute nothingness, her carnal mind fought her for 3 solid weeks. Her human ego flooded her consciousness with chaotic thoughts because it was terrified of losing control. But in the 4th week, her mind suddenly became perfectly quiet. For just a few seconds, she was not thinking about nothing. She was absolutely nothing. There was no exhausted human being, and there were no material problems. There was only the vast, empty presence of the infinite Creator. That single fraction of a second in absolute nothingness completely shattered her physical disease. Her physical energy was completely restored because the mental patterns that created the exhaustion were absolutely annihilated in the void. The profound truth is that her physical exhaustion was simply her human consciousness exhausting itself through constant mental static. When she surrendered to absolute nothingness, she gave her consciousness the absolute permission to rest in the divine law. Every disease and every financial collapse only exists as a temporary mental appearance in your consciousness. When you return your spirit to its original state of absolute nothingness, all of these demonic problems are instantly revealed as pathetic illusions with no ultimate reality. You must have the absolute courage to execute this 3rd minute today. You must completely release every spiritual crutch you have ever leaned on. You do not affirm any truth, and you do not visualize any healing light. You sit in the blinding stillness, and you let every human thought completely dissolve. You are not trying to succeed at meditation. You are completely offering yourself to the absolute explosive power of complete emptiness. You must completely integrate these 3 absolute revelations into a single, unstoppable spiritual force. This is the exact synthesis that produces the most explosive, miraculous healing in your human existence. You begin by sitting in absolute stillness, where the demonic noise of the material world cannot touch you. You take 3 breaths, and you instantly enter the 1st minute of divine indifference. You look directly at the terrifying medical report or the collapsing bank account, and you completely strip it of its emotional charge. You silently declare your total divine indifference, and you completely release your desperate, anxious attachment to the physical outcome. You let go of your pathetic human need to control the universe, and you rest in the absolute, unchangeable trust of the spiritual law. As the heavy burden of human striving physically falls off your shoulders, you instantly transition into the 2nd minute of impersonal awareness. You must violently shift your focus completely away from your personal physical crisis. You silently affirm that the infinite healing presence is flowing right now, not as your personal miracle, but as the absolute, universal reality. You feel your separate human identity completely dissolving into this massive healing presence. You are no longer a separate, miserable person begging for a breakthrough from a distant God. You are the exact consciousness of the Creator, recognizing its own absolute wholeness. You expand entirely beyond your pathetic personal boundaries into the vast, impersonal awareness of the eternal Spirit. Then you must step into the 3rd minute and face the absolute terror of the carnal mind. You enter complete nothingness. You must violently release the awareness of healing itself. You must release every single religious concept you have ever been taught by the modern church. You sit in blinding, absolute stillness. You are thinking nothing and seeking nothing and being absolutely nothing. When the desperate thoughts of your human ego try to rise up to fill the void, you instantly let them pass without a single ounce of engagement. You return again and again to the empty, explosive presence of the infinite Creator. This is the most difficult minute for the human flesh, but it is the absolute epicenter of your miraculous transformation. After these 3 profound minutes, you do not jump back into the chaotic panic of the physical world. You sit for 30 seconds, and you allow the absolute power of the stillness to completely settle into your physical flesh. You open your eyes, and you carry this undeniable peace into the violent storm of your daily life. You will instantly notice a profound quality of peace and a massive decrease in your emotional reactivity. As these 3 states completely rewire your consciousness at the deepest fundamental levels, you will experience an absolute, undeniable transformation. The practice works precisely because you consistently offer yourself to the absolute supremacy of the Spirit, and you stop interfering with the divine law. Your human intellect will scream that you feel absolutely nothing during the practice. The religious establishment has trained you to expect emotional goosebumps and dramatic physical sensations to prove that God is moving. You must completely ignore the lies of your carnal feelings. Absolute spiritual healing does not depend on your pathetic human emotions. The ultimate power of these 3 minutes lies in the massive shifts occurring entirely beneath the surface of your conscious awareness. You are completely dismantling the demonic structures of your carnal mind. You must show up daily and execute these 3 minutes with absolute faithfulness, regardless of what your physical senses tell you. You are destroying the weak human being who desperately sought a healing, and you are resurrecting as the absolute healing presence itself. The demonic carnal mind will instantly scream that your physical circumstances are far too urgent for this profound spiritual practice. When a massive financial crisis hits or your physical health completely collapses, your human intellect will demand immediate panic. You will convince yourself that you cannot possibly sit in absolute stillness while your entire material world is burning to the ground. That is the exact moment when these 3 minutes become your absolute weapon of supreme authority. You do not wait for perfect, peaceful conditions to practice the presence of the infinite Creator. You step into the blinding stillness right in the middle of your most terrifying human nightmare. Your carnal ego will absolutely rebel and tell you that your physical problems are far too massive to ignore for 3 minutes. You must violently set aside every single screaming demand of the material world. You must completely trust that the absolute power waiting for you in the empty stillness is infinitely more real than anything your anxious human mind can accomplish. Look at the profound reality of Robert Chen, who was completely paralyzed by severe anxiety. He practiced this absolute stillness for 10 solid weeks, and he felt absolutely nothing. His carnal mind was completely convinced that he was failing because his physical circumstances remained completely unchanged. His human intellect almost forced him to quit because the flesh is completely addicted to instant, visible results. But he held the line of absolute spiritual authority, and he refused to surrender to the physical illusion. In the 11th week, he stepped into the 3rd minute, and his massive mental static completely collapsed. For 10 absolute seconds, his human consciousness was completely annihilated, and he experienced the explosive power of absolute nothingness. He realized the brutal truth that he had been trying far too hard. He was desperately seeking a healing, instead of completely surrendering to the divine presence. The absolute second, he released all of his pathetic human effort. The infinite nothingness completely revealed itself. From that single fraction of a second, his entire material existence was violently transformed. His crippling anxiety completely dissolved into the absolute nothingness. His earthly career and his human relationships flourished with massive abundance. The physical transformation did not happen because he magically manipulated his circumstances. It happened because he completely stopped relating to his life from a place of human anxiety, and he started living from the unchangeable bedrock of divine stillness. Joel Goldsmith taught that absolute spiritual healing is exactly like a divine seed growing deep underground in the dark. Your physical eyes cannot see the massive progress, but a profound, violent transformation is occurring entirely beneath the surface of your human awareness. You might experience a massive breakthrough in a few days, or you might require months of absolute patient practice. You must water that divine seed every single day through your faithful execution of these 3 minutes. You completely trust that the explosive power of the infinite Creator is rewiring your entire existence, even when the physical world remains completely blind to it. You must completely understand that this massive spiritual authority does not stop at your own physical body. Joel Goldsmith discovered that the explosive power of these 3 minutes completely shatters the boundaries of your personal existence and radiates into the entire material world. When you touch absolute divine indifference and impersonal awareness and complete nothingness, you become an unstoppable healing presence on the earth. You do not even need to speak a single human word. When your relationships are completely consumed by demonic conflict and worldly chaos, you do not fight the other person with your pathetic human logic. You do not try to send them healing energy from your carnal mind. You completely bring their existence into your silent awareness, and you enter the absolute deep stillness. You allow your consciousness to touch the blinding void of nothingness, and you create a massive spiritual vacuum where the divine healing can absolutely reach them and completely transform their reality. Millions of believers are trapped in the terrifying illusion of poverty because they are desperately trying to manipulate the material world. You must apply these 3 absolute revelations to your collapsing financial existence today. The religious establishment tells you to claim money and visualize a larger bank account. That is the exact anxious striving that absolutely blocks your financial miracle. You must release your desperate human attachment through divine indifference. You must completely stop identifying your success as a personal human achievement through impersonal awareness. You must touch the massive, abundant nothingness that contains absolutely every possibility in the universe. When you execute this absolute surrender, you become completely available for explosive opportunities that your anxious human mind could never possibly conceive. The massive financial doors will swing open, and the endless divine resources will violently flow into your life, not through your pathetic magical thinking, but through the absolute, unchangeable clarity of the stillness. You must realize that human consciousness is not confined to your tiny physical brain. There is only one infinite consciousness, expressing itself through billions of temporary physical forms. When you step into the absolute deep stillness, you are violently injecting the healing power of God into the massive collective field that connects every living being on earth. Your 3 minutes of absolute nothingness is a massive spiritual weapon that destroys the darkness in this world. Every single moment of genuine deep stillness serves the absolute healing of the entire human race. This is not a poetic religious metaphor, but the absolute terrifying reality of the spiritual kingdom. You must violently integrate these massive revelations into every single second of your chaotic daily life. You do not leave this absolute authority on your meditation chair. You execute violent micro-moments of absolute stillness throughout your entire day. Before you step into a terrifying human conversation, you take 10 absolute seconds to enter divine indifference, and you completely release the physical outcome. Right in the middle of a massive worldly crisis, you pause for 3 breaths and you touch the vast, impersonal awareness. You completely remember that you are not a separate, miserable human being struggling alone, but the exact, infinite consciousness operating through a physical form. You can touch the absolute nothingness while you are sitting in chaotic traffic or walking through a busy street. You simply release every single mental thought for a few seconds and you touch the empty, explosive stillness that is always vibrating beneath the physical noise. You are completely training your consciousness to rest in the unshakable kingdom as your absolute natural state instead of the exhausting mental panic of the flesh. We have reached the absolute climax of your spiritual existence. You are no longer a pathetic human being begging for a distant miracle. You are holding the exact 3 revelations that completely shatter the demonic illusion of your physical suffering. The ultimate healing you have been desperately searching for is not the fixing of your broken material conditions. The absolute true healing is the explosive discovery of who you actually are beneath the decaying physical shadows. You are not a broken mortal needing constant religious repair. You are the exact divine consciousness of the infinite Creator, temporarily expressing through a human form. Your carnal mind has completely forgotten its supreme identity, but these 3 minutes of absolute stillness force your spirit to violently remember the truth. This massive shift from desperately seeking a healing to absolutely recognizing your eternal wholeness is the final victory. You must step over the threshold today and leave the exhausting religious striving completely behind you. The old demonic way of anxious pleading and identifying with physical limitation is completely dead. You must choose the blinding path of absolute stillness. You must dedicate 3 uninterrupted minutes every single day to completely annihilate your human ego. You do not wait for the physical conditions to improve before you begin this practice. You do not wait until your human intellect perfectly understands the mystical law. You execute this absolute mandate right now in the exact middle of your human chaos. You sit in the stillness and you execute the first minute of divine indifference. You completely release your desperate attachment to the physical outcome and you trust the supreme intelligence. You step into the second minute of impersonal awareness and you completely dissolve your pathetic separate self into the infinite healing presence. You finally cross into the third minute of absolute nothingness. You violently release every single spiritual concept and you plunge into the empty, explosive presence of the living God. You allow the vast silence to completely consume your consciousness and you walk into your daily life carrying the unshakable authority of the eternal kingdom. The miraculous healing you are crying out for is not hiding in a distant heaven. It is waiting for you in 3 absolute minutes of genuine, unyielding stillness. You are completely surrounded by a world that is suffocating in darkness and physical terror. Your commitment to this profound stillness does not just heal your physical body. It turns you into a massive beacon of explosive divine power for every single person you encounter. The infinite Creator has already established your absolute perfection. The kingdom of God is completely vibrating within your spirit, right this very second. The only remaining question is whether you will surrender your human effort and step into the blinding stillness. The eternal presence is calling your name, and the absolute manifestation of your healing begins right now.